Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of GenAI Vlog. So previously, we talked about how to deploy an Streamlit application from local desktop to Azure Web App using Docker container and Azure Container Registry. So in front of me, I'm in a VS Code. This is a system diagram, and we walk through each of these modules to see how we can put this together. On top of that, we have this GitHub repo to store all the code that we used to make this happen. So today in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to put user authentication onto this web app. So with that being said, let's get started. The first thing to talk about is this new package called Streamlit Authenticator. It is actually a package that works with Streamlit application, and I find it quite helpful for me to put together a couple of designs in terms of widgets and YAML file configuration to put together the user authentication. So to get this package into your app, first things first is go to your requirements.txt file and add streamlit-authenticator. So to configure username and password, what that means is that information need to be stored somewhere. So this configuration YAML file, you will need to physically create in the same directory as the app.py script, and this supports the username and password. You can, of course, default a couple of ones if you want to. You can pre-authorize, things like that. To upload and dump the information into the configuration.yaml file, you will need a package called py-yaml. And altogether, that is all the prerequisite that you will be needing to put together this app.py script. So now let's talk about the app.py script. First things first, you have YAML loader. This gives you the safe loader. And what that gives you is the way to load the YAML file into this script. Since this is serverless, obviously you want to do that on the spot. After that, a couple of things I found useful is name, key, of course, expiration date. I want to start with the login window. Now, this basically means the user will have to enter some sort of username password, and then there's a button for them to log in. Now, here's the logic. If user login is successful, you will then see something, right? You will see a message says welcome. You will see some title, says some content. Or in this case, perhaps I can design a page called Software Engineering Basics. And maybe this page collects some information, some sort of tutorial that I can allow my users to read about. And all that can be defined here. I can quickly take you there to show you what that looks like. So this is the page that goes into the login upon successfully logged in. Here's a function called Software Engineering Basics. And then as you can see here, it's just another Streamlit web page. Maybe you have a title, you have some sort of success bar, things like that. And then here, I just write a bunch of markdown file that discuss a couple of things that I used or I have been using in the past that I found helpful for me to tackle software engineering interview. So for example, the big O notation, right? And then there's some sample code stuff out here, and maybe there's a time space analysis. For example, this section talked about linear time, things like that. So this is a stopped out markdown page that the Streamlit app will render. And this is a function, and this function will be called if user login successfully. If not, then of course, pop out an error message says, hey, something's wrong. And then this is the bare minimum that you will be needing to set up the user authentication. Now, of course, this is when user experience comes in. You don't want to just have a login, right? What if user do not remember their password? What if they need to change their password? They need to change their username, things like that. So on top of login and displaying the content you want to display, you also have a sidebar, which is what I'm doing here on line 42. So pretty much after line 42, this is what I consider just to make the user experience a little bit more comfortable. Now, for example, the first thing is we have something here that allow user to change the password. And the way you do that is use authenticator.reset password. So that's one thing you can build. Another thing is to allow user to register a new registration. So if a user does not like their current username and password, they want to register a new one, please have at it, right? If there's a new user, you want to onboard them, do you necessarily want to type in yourself manually? You don't want to do that, right? You want to let users to do that. So this gives user the freedom to handle that kind of process. And then, of course, if user forgot their username, there's a chunk of code here to handle that process. And if user forgot their password, of course, certainly that can be changed as well. So this is kind of like the bare minimum of what I consider the user authentication piece of a software as a service platform. And now that we have this, we're going to test this out locally. So as we discussed before, of course, you want to save everything. Let's list out what's in the directory. Now, for example, we have Docker file, we have config YAML, we have app.py. Really, the things that's being changed is requirements. Let's look that up. Requirements is changed with these two packages. You can also type out the config.yaml, and then we added this entire script for the YAML file. So once that's done, we can then do a test locally. We're going to use Docker for that. So this assumes your Docker desktop is live and open. So what we're going to do is Docker build. We're going to tag it -t, and we're going to give a name. For example, hello world. And then this is to use a local directory. So we're going to put a dot, meaning that I'm using the artifact in this particular directory. And that is the local directory, which is here. So now that this finished the build, let's run it. We're going to do Docker run -p. This -p means port range. We're going to do external, that is 8501, internal, we're going to do 8501 as well. And then obviously you want to type the name, right? Hello world. And then let's hit enter. And this will launch the app. So this URL will give you exactly where the app is. And you can click on this, or you can go to your Docker desktop, which I have down here. I'm going to click on this, and it will fire up the web-based application. So this is a web-based application. It's just a plain app with a login form, as we discussed before. Of course, there's a sidebar, registered user, forgot username, forgot password, things like that. And then you can, of course, enter with your username. That's predefined. In my case, I'll be using eagle0504, and then I'll enter my password. I hit enter, and boom, there you go. It will display this content. And this is the software engineering basics webpage that I built using Markdown file in a Streamlit web app. So big O notation, we talked about that, constant time, logarithmic time, things like that. So this is the content that I allow user to take a look if they log in successfully. And then now, say they want to log out, and all they got to do is click on this button, log out, and you are all set. So now we know that this is up and running locally in this local host A501. Now we want to get this up to the Azure Web App. So we're going to do the same thing. So let's go to our terminal window in our VS Code. The first thing we need to do is use Docker to log into the Azure Container Registry. So this is my container registry that we discussed from the previous episode. And navigate to settings range. In access keys, you can see that I have a username and password. So what I'm going to do is to get all these information down, and then I can use this information to log in using Docker from local CLI. So I'm going to grab the login server, come back here into the terminal. I'm going to say Docker login, paste that in there, and hit enter. And it says login succeeded. And that's because I've already previously logged in. If this is the first time for you, you will be using this username and the password. Now let's go to repository, check out Hello World. As you can see here, I have a latest v1. So of course, I don't really want to collapse with this version. So I'm going to be using latest v2. So I'll say Docker tag Hello World. And let me go to the access key, grab the login server. I'm going to put that there. And then I'm going to say the name of the app, Hello World. And I'm going to separate with a colon and tag the version name. In this case, I'm going to be using latest v2, just like that. Now that this version of image is tagged, I can then safely push this to Azure Container Registry. So I can arrow key up, and then all I gotta do is come back up here and get rid of tag, and then swap it with Docker push. In this case, we do not need hello world because what we're pushing is that particular image. So we don't need to call the name again. And hit enter, and you are all set. So now from terminal window, we can see that this is successfully pushed to a repository under this name or server login. So let's go out to the cloud and take a look. Let's go to repositories, and then let's go to Hello World. And as you can see here, there's a latest v2 version, and that is the version that I just pushed. So now whatever we're building locally, it's safely pushed onto this repository on Azure. Now let's go to Web App. Here's my Azure Web App that we deployed last time. Let's go to Deployment Center, and we're going to scroll down to select the correct version. Since we're doing latest v2, then let's check that. And let's press Save. And this will save the artifact in the Web App, and you will be all set. Navigate to Overview and press Start. This will start the web-based application. And I personally always have a habit of stopping it after I use it, just so that it doesn't incur any charges. And then you can click the URL under default domain. This will open a new tab. And as you can see, this is the login page and the web-based application that we just talked about before. Now you have a live URL up and running, and then you are all set. Just as additional verification, let's go to incognito, paste this URL in here to verify this app can indeed be ran. Perfect, that is up and running. Let's put in the default username and password, see if this is working. Hit enter, and boom, this is the web page, along with the software engineering basics notes that we talked about in the Markdown file, rendered on a Streamlit web-based application. Of course, sidebar is here if you need it. If you don't need it, the default setup is that it's hidden. Once you finish reading this, you can log out. And this wraps up the tutorial of this video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like.